Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2025 Honda Civic Type R. Up front is a 2.0 liter turbocharged inline-4, and down below is a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Civic Type R for 3 reasons. First of all, I haven't driven one in a couple of years. I drove one right as they debuted in 2023, and then I haven't touched one since, and so it's good to be back behind the wheel. The second reason is the fact that I just drove the GR Corolla, and so we are going to be doing some comparing and contrasting to that vehicle, since they are pretty much direct competitors. The third reason I'm excited is that I also recently drove an FD2 Civic Type R. That was a 2007, a vehicle that was not available in the American market, but that is the lineage of the Civic Type R. And so we're going to be comparing it to its older sibling as well. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 2-liter turbo under the hood. Well, it's good for about 315 horsepower, so it already has a leg up on the GR Corolla, adding 15 more horsepower over that vehicle. It also has an additional cylinder and is just straight up nicer to drive around town. Because you have that extra cylinder helping out, you're just a little bit smoother. You know, it's another cook in the kitchen, which I really like. And so, to spoil my final thoughts coming up, the Civic Type R is actually nicer to daily drive than the GR Corolla, but we'll talk more about that later. This engine was also used in the Accord Sport towards the end of that run of last generation, and it just offers such zippy 4-cylinder fun here in the Civic Type R. Now, there is technically one mod under the hood, and that is a metal coolant tank. From what the owners told me, these cars sometimes have issues with cracking plastic coolant tanks, so he has opted for a metal one, which is just more of a longevity mod. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 6-speed manual. It does have a close ratio manual transmission. It does have auto rev matching as well. It has a lovely shifter throw, great clutch engagement, nice and light, everything I want out of an enthusiast vehicle. It feels right. It doesn't feel like Honda just chucked some random Econobox transmission into this thing and called it a day. No. This feels like a meticulously crafted transmission, and that's quite frankly because it is. Last but not least, the Civic Type R is front-wheel drive. They've always been front-wheel drive. I assume they always will be, with no all-wheel drive version offered. How does it feel to drive the Civic Type R? Well, it is very aggressive. It's a lot more aggressive than your regular Honda Civic Touring or whatever base model you want to compare this to. Hey, I just got passed by a red one. Here we go, a little Saturday morning pull for you. Fighting for traction. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll butter your biscuits this morning. I love it. Driving the Civic Type R is wonderful. It is fast. It is directed. It has direction and feeling, and it's just set out to do a mission and does that mission very well. It's very engaging. I'm using my right arm, I'm using my left foot, I'm using my brain, I'm using my heart, I'm using my lungs. That's what I like to see and feel out of a car like this. It doesn't feel overly video gamey, if that makes sense, even though it is modern. And sure, you do have auto rev matching and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's still very user oriented. And you got to work the car. I mean, that's the simple pleasure of it. You know, it's not a soulless EV. This still has personality. Down low in the rev range, below 2,500 RPM, you feel like a USPS truck. But then you get into the boost, and it's this exciting moment, and that's what I love to see in cars. That's what I love to drive in cars, and that's why I love the Civic Type R. Visibility's fine. Ride quality is decent. We'll talk about that later on as well, but overall, it's a great driver's vehicle. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 2 gauges and a screen. To the left is the coolant temperature, to the right is the fuel, and then we get our digital screen in the center. I really like this layout. I think it's simple and easy to read, and I think it's miles ahead of what Toyota's doing at the same time. On the steering wheel, on the left, we do have our skip track, volume, and voice commands, and off to the right, we have our adaptive cruise control, as well as steering assist. Off to the left, we have a climate control vent, we have our gauge dimmer switch, we have our safety button on and off, and traction control on and off. And moving on to the door, we have the latch to get in and out, power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we get our infotainment display, of course, wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all the fixins that you would expect out of a vehicle like this or any other Honda Civic, you get here. However, you do have some extra performance pages. And the coolest thing to me is that there's actually a built-in data logging system. So you can start a data log and it will capture everything that the car is doing. Basically play it back to see, oh, when I got on the highway, what was the boost doing? What was the air temperature doing? What was this doing? What was the oil pressure doing? The reason I think this is so cool is because I used to data log in my old RX-7, but that was a mess of wires going into a laptop while I drove and it was sitting in the passenger seat. Like, that's old school data logging. Now it's built in. Like, I feel like an old timer now. I'm like, oh, kids these days don't have to break out the laptop to figure out what their ECU is doing. So that was pretty cool. Here's the backup camera. I think it's fine. Down below that, we have 2 climate control vents as well as the hazard switch. And off to the far right, yes, we have more climate vent, but we also have a Civic Type R badge with a serial number on it. Very nice to see that. Down below, we have dual zone climate. Honda makes you pay a pretty penny to get dual zone climate in the Civics. The SI does not come with dual zone climate. So nice to see that here. But then down below, we have 2 USB-A's. These are pretty outdated for the 2025 model year. Would have loved to have seen USB-C, but beggars can't be choosers. We also have a 12-volt outlet and a wireless charger. So I guess we have most of our charging needs met. Then we move into the center console. So off to the left, we have our drive modes as well as R mode. This turns everything up to 11. When you're out on the track, put it into R mode. It's going to disable traction control and allow you to chuck this thing around a racetrack as fast as you can. Now, I would not recommend using this on the road, but that's why we have other drive modes for individual, sport, and comfort. Individual, of course, you can program the car to have your specific settings. Then we have the power parking brake and auto holding brake, and then we have the shifter. Now, the shift knob is aftermarket. The owner put in a leather-wrapped shift knob, which I quite like. He said that the old shift knob was just straight metal, and in the summer, it got so incredibly hot, you couldn't touch it for a while, so he opted for this red leather. Stays cool in the summer, which is nice. Then we do have cup holders. We will do a big friggin' bottle test in the FL5 Civic Type R, and unfortunately it fails, but we knew that from long ago. We do get a tiny center console, and the seats. The seats are red. Not only do they say Type R on them, they are very aggressive bucket seats. This is the biggest departure from the regular Civic that you might see. They're a lot to get in and out of. They're not, for the ill-willed or larger fellows like myself. I fit in them fine, but getting in and out, the undercarriage gets scraped like a Miata leaving Cars and Coffee every time I get in and out of the car, so, there's that. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a backseat review. All right, getting in the back of the 2025 Honda Civic Type R, and there's 2 things to note about this. First of all, getting in the back, knee room, very plentiful. Headroom plentiful. Way better than the GR Corolla. I could actually fit back here in the Civic Type R. I remember a couple summers ago, I moved out of my parents and I got my own house. And I remember when we got the keys and we started moving stuff in and blah, blah, blah. Also used the Honda Ridgeline to move in. I walked into our basement that was completely empty at the time, and I just didn't know what to do with so much space. I had only lived in this tiny little bedroom at my parents' house. And so that's how I feel back here. My brain is short-circuiting going, I could dance back here. I could swim back here. I could fill this up with furniture and goods. That's how much space is back here. And you forget that after driving the GR Corolla. You're like, oh yeah, performance cars have awful back seats. Not the Civic Type R. So if you are going to use back seats, go Civic Type R every single day of the week. It's going to be better. The other thing I want to note is that the owner actually has the window sticker right here. So very, very cool. However, one downside of the back seat is that it is a 2+2 and not a bench seat. So there is no middle seat belt here in the back of the Civic. Just for the Type R, the regular Civic obviously does have a third seat. Anyway, I'm over the moon being back here just because it is so incredibly spacious. So let's hop into the very back. We'll see even more space out there. All right, around the back of the Civic Type R, there's a little button underneath the Honda badge. Pull that up and there you go. The owner has put a Type R floor mat in it. And of course he does use this for going to work. This is his daily driver. So he has some of his work stuff back here. This again, like the back seat, is tremendously better than the GR Corolla in every fathomable measurement. It is way more space. It is way more practical. The mouth of the trunk is way bigger, way more accessible. It's just fantastic. And of course, you can come in here. Let's move this out of the way. Button here, fold this down, and it does fold pretty flat. So very, very nice. Both seats do that, so you can fold those down. If you gotta get, some big flat screen TV back here, you can do that with the seats down. So very, very practical, very usable, and a huge benefit of having this based off the Civic as opposed to a different chassis. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and this is finished in Boost Blue, which I think is probably my favorite color here for the Civic Type R. I absolutely adore it. I drove a regular Civic manual in this color as well, and I think it looked killer on that car. But with the Civic Type R, it just looks so special. I also do like the fact that the newer Civic Type R, this generation of Civic Type R, is almost a little bit calmer than the outgoing FK8. As much as I loved that car, it's very aggressive, it's very in your face, it's very macho, it's very angular. It looks like it's almost trying to be a fighter jet. This looks a little bit more smoothed, and I really like that. I think it's a little bit more supple and better to look at than the previous gen Civic Type R, so that's nice overall. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the 2025 Civic Type R? Well, of course, this is a fantastic automobile. I absolutely adore it. It's fast in every way that you need. It's engaging to drive. It's calm, it's simple, and Honda offers 100,000-mile warranties on these. You get all of the perks of a traditional Honda with all of the fun that you would expect from other brands. So it's great in that respect. But let's do some comparisons. Let's do the first more actual comparison, which is to the GR Corolla. I just had a GR Corolla for a week. I posted a video about that not too long ago, and that car was just about $50,000, so about $2,500 more than this car. Pretty same comparison. That was a fully loaded top trim GR Corolla Premium Plus, blah, blah, blah. What's better, the Civic Type R or the GR Corolla? Well, it's going to be a lot of personal preference. Here's what I can say, having driven both vehicles almost back to back. I drove the GR Corolla about 3 days ago before filming this. The GR Corolla is crazier. That car is a raccoon in the garage. You're never quite sure what it's gonna do, but it's always a hoot, and it keeps you on your toes. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry. It is rigid, it will break your spine if you hit the right pothole, and it's a great car. I love it. I love the GR Corolla with all my heart. I fell head over heels for that vehicle, but that is a lifestyle, and you have to accept quite a bit. The Civic Type R is comfier. Now, it's not a bubbly cloud car compared to a track car. No. This is still a hardcore track car. This is still a rough and tumble vehicle. You're gonna feel those bumps on the road. You're gonna feel that clutch engagement. It's gonna jitter at a stoplight. You're still gonna get those sensations, but it does feel smoothed out, and it just feels a little bit more confident on the road as well. Because it has 4 cylinders, it has less to prove than the GR Corolla. The GR Corolla has to punch way above its weight class just to get attention. This, it doesn't have to cry as much. It doesn't have to be that squeaky wheel to get the grease all the time. It also is bigger. This is a lot more practical of a vehicle. The trunk is actually usable. The back seats are actually usable, but it is less crazy than the GR Corolla. But not everyone wants a crazy redheaded stepsister in their life, and that's fine. You don't need that. That's where the Civic Type R is great, because I could see myself actually living with this car, actually daily driving it, and treating it like a regular Honda Civic for 9 out of 10 drives. But on that 10th drive, yeah, I'm going to beat the snot out of it. I'm going to be very, very quick, and I'm really going to enjoy it. So that's that comparison. Let's move across the aisle to the comparison of the 07 Civic Type R. Now that I've driven an older Civic Type R, because we never got them here in the States, we only started getting them in the late 2010s. How do the two vehicles compare? Well, comparing the 2019 Civic Type R that I drove to this 2025, it's like comparing a burger to a cheeseburger. A little bit changes, people have their preference, and that's fine. Comparing the 2007 to the 2025 is like comparing a cheese pizza to a handgun. Very different uses, very different scenarios, very different customer bases. The old Civic Type R, the FD2, the 07 that I drove, is super, super rev happy. It does not have a turbo, and so it has to rely on its own wits to impress, to move, to run. And so you get this really gratifying experience driving that car. When you rev it all the way out, you know that the entire symphony is working together. There's no one at the soundboard that's tweaking the noises or making it more than it might be. You just have that motor, and that's all that you have. This, well, you have a turbocharger. You got a lot of screens, you have a lot of data. And so this makes 115 more horsepower than that car. It's way faster, but it's way more calculated. It's a little bit more artificial than the old Civic Type R. And so it raises the question, did the Civic Type R lose what made it cool, or is it just evolving? Because I also think that we take a look at the Mazda Miata, the MX-5, of which I actually drove one of these to this review. That car hasn't changed its idea in 35 years. It has maintained a small 4-cylinder rear-wheel drive manual convertible, and you drive one from 1990, you drive one from 08, you drive one from 2026, they're all gonna drive in the same exact way. And people think that those cars are slightly outdated. So then you look at what Honda's doing with the Civic Type R, and they keep improving it. They keep making it faster. They keep making it bigger. They keep making it more comfortable. They keep making it just inches and inches better every single model year. I think that's a good thing. I think growth is important. And sure, this doesn't drive like the old Civic Type R, driving them nearly back to back. You wouldn't even think they were built by the same company. But that's not always a bad thing. It's good that I'm not still doing the things I was doing in high school. I've grown out of them. I've matured. I have rent to pay now. I have bills and taxes and food, health insurance. Maybe I've lost a little bit of my childhood zestiness. Maybe I've lost a touch of my personality, but that's the way that life goes. I'm a more efficient human being now. I work better. I have a better work ethic. I'm smarter with my money. I'm smarter in my relationships. And so the Civic Type R has grown. Maybe it's outgrown its childishness, but that's not always a bad thing. This is faster, this is better, this is smarter, and that's how I feel behind the wheel of the Civic Type R. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Mark for letting me borrow his Civic Type R. What an incredible glow up. I reviewed Mark's Grand Cherokee a few years ago, and he has since now traded up to this, which is just awesome. It's so cool to review people's cars over several years and see them get more expensive, cooler, better cars. And that is so, so gratifying. I'm so proud of Mark for being able to achieve one of his dream cars, because this is just so cool. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.